of interest. So let me get going, because I want to just give a short PowerPoint which gives some context to the strategic plan. And then what we'll do, I've just got one question for you. So we'll break out into groups to just, for me to gather your input into that question. And then we'll get everyone back in again, nominate someone to be the reporter, come back in again and kind of have a conversation about your feedback. So let me just share. Let's hope I can figure out how to do this. 1 minute. Oh, yes. Okay. I think that's it. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to do this quickly. It looks like a lot of slides, but I promise you I'm going to do it really quickly. Just to give you a little bit of context. So we have a mission statement. It's a mission statement you probably all have a sense of. We help communities impacted by pollution, flooding, fire, excessive heat, etc. We do that by helping get technical assistance, grant writing support, advocacy support, and then helping residents get connected to policies that might and legislation that might address those issues. We are just over 350 members strong. Actually, I think any minute we're about to have 50 US states and territories. And then we have, and this is kind of important for our latter conversation, we're starting to get a critical mass of members, it's state by state. So for example, in Louisiana, 30 members. Of our membership, 96% live in the communities that they serve, 85% represent underserved and BIPOC communities, and the average paid staff is none or one. So basically, we are a group of people who live in the communities and are being directly impacted by climate change and toxic contamination. Yeah, there's average number of paid staff, climate justice concerns, flooding, heat, hurricanes, erosion, drought, wildfire, you name it, you have it. Environmental concerns, air pollution, groundwater contamination, hazardous waste sites, lead contamination, fighting development, sewage treatment plants, etc. And the strategies that you're using, mostly community organizing and education, but also some legislative policy work, putting in nature-based solutions and those kind of programs, political activism. So what does A2 do? We connect you to pro bono resources. We've connected 225 members, so 63% of our members, 2 different pro bono resources worth around 9 million. And we help our members secure funding. So we've applied for, I wish I could tell you we've secured, but we have applied for approximately 79, almost 80 million on behalf of 220 members. And this just gives you a graph. So what we've been focusing on a lot on most recently is federal funding. So EPA, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, NOAA, HUD, FEMA. The blue is pending. This, I think, is being written. This is successful and this is unsuccessful. So you can see we have I think we've managed to get about 30 million of successful applications. And we support grassroots organizing. And we have the sort of, situation that just, it is what it is, for better or worse, where I guess we have a pretty broad set of relationships with 350 members. And then some of those relationships are deep, as in we've spent quite a lot of time. So for example, in Miami, Oklahoma, very much on my mind right now because I'm helping them write the $20 million EPA community change grant. They have severe flooding. We help funded protests, help them get rain gardens installed, connecting them to the media, and then writing these deep, level grants. Others, we've just exchanged an email with you. You've joined A2, and our relationships have been much lighter touch. Sometimes that's because we haven't really connected enough, and sometimes that's because you haven't wanted to or haven't been able to. So very kind of varied. So how are we expanding? A lot of our expansion right now is what we are calling regional hubs. So this is, and everybody's using regional hubs in a very different way. For us, we're using it in a way that describes when one A2 member helps bring on multiple other A2 members, typically right now 5 A2 members who are in a locality, and they kind of bring them on, and then we provide support and assistance to the group. That's a good way of building on and supporting the social networks of existing A2 members. Our funders like it. We provide small sub-grants to the funders who, are supporting these. And so by 2026, we'll have 30 regional hubs, each with 5 members. So what that means is that by the end of 2026, we'll have approximately 500 members because of that expansion. In particular, that expansion is occurring where our funders like to fund our work. So that's mostly in the Midwest and Rocky Mountains. You can just, I'm just going to, you could see our kind of step by our growth. This is different sets of parameters. This is total dollars that we've helped our members get. This is the number of members we have. This is the number that represent low income communities. This is the number that we're helping with green infrastructure, nature-based solutions. So you can kind of see this growth year by year. Okay, so this is the real meat of the strategic plan. What are we planning to do for the next 3 years? This is what we want your feedback on. And so what we've said we plan to do is to continue to get money and technical systems in the hands of community leaders. We know how important that is for you. It's what funds you to do your protests, to file lawsuits, to do, programming, green infrastructure, get food to community events, etc. We've had a fair amount of success getting members' stories into the press, so we're going to continue to do that. And we're going to do more of the kind of visual communications, getting some of the sort of best world-class photographers into your communities, helping tell your stories. But this is where maybe the more dramatic change, or I'm not sure if it's dramatic change, but we've always wanted to do power building, community building, movement building. And we haven't done that so much, and we're now in a position to be able to do that. And so what we're looking to do is set up what we're calling state organizing centers. So those are essentially where members in one state have decided that they would like to collaborate and work together to build power and influence, and we will facilitate that. So we're not telling you it's not a top down, it's a bottom up. Who wants to work together and how can we help you make that happen? We have the small amount of funds to set up our first 5 state organizing centers in the Mississippi River Basin. As it happens, I've just been reaching out to organizations that are essentially already somewhat set up as state organizing centers and said, hey, do you want to join us? And we're getting quite a lot of interest that way. And there might be others where we don't have funding and they just go, yes, we want to do it. So this might be something that happens slowly and carefully, or something that happens quickly. So as we get the state organizing centers together, the goal is to launch campaigns, initially state level campaigns, and then we might start to look at, well, this state has just done this really powerful campaign and moved things along. Perhaps the next state would like to test that campaign. We've just hired over the weekend our first field director to lead this work. And Stuart Sinclair, who many of you will know because he runs the other A2 forum, has agreed, he'll be joining that team to be a researcher and writer. So he'll be doing lots of the research that will be underpinning the campaigns. And then the goal is for us to raise funds. So each state organizing center, the acronym is SOC, each will have a state field staff. So as we do that, it gives us the opportunity. Right now, we have a leadership council made up of A2 members who have sort of self-elected, they volunteered to be on the leadership council. We have the chance to slowly shift that leadership, or the nature of that leadership council, so that each state elects an organization and a community leader to be on that leadership council. And that leadership council won't run the organization, but what they will be doing is helping set our priorities for our campaigns. Last two things. So we're doing a lot of green infrastructure, i.e. climate adaptation stuff. We've never really had the funding or quite known how to do the climate mitigation stuff, but my co-founder keeps saying no adaptation without mitigation. We want to, this is about systemic change. And then lastly, we're going to be big and bold, and we're excited about our place. We are the largest coalition of frontline communities in the country, and we're proud to be working with you. But obviously, we have to be extremely collaborative and build a movement. That's it. I think rather than doing Q&A, because it might take up a lot of time, what I'm going to do is move everyone into breakout groups. I think just a minute. Eight breakout groups, and I will ask you, let me look at my email to check that the timing. So I'll ask you to spend your first 5 minutes in that group just thinking for yourself. So the question for you is, what tricks are we missing in this strategic plan? And it could be one or could be many. What else should we be thinking about as it relates to this strategic plan? If you could nominate someone to report back, so I've never done this, I'm very excited about this, break us all out into groups. If you could then just discuss within your groups the things that you come up, the trick that you think should be included in the strategic plan, have a 20-minute conversation, and then we'll all report back. And then I think maybe we should then deal with questions, clarifications, etc. as we come back. Does that sound okay? Maybe we should just do it, go for it, and you can tell me what you think okay. How many groups did I say? 6? Or did I say 8? Did I say 8? Okay. Include co-host to breakout groups. Okay. Ta-da! Bye. I think we might all be back. Thank you so much. And does anyone remember being in group 1 and therefore able to present? Who knows that they were in group 1? Group 1? Oh, were we in group 1, Myra? Oh my word, that's so okay. So that's me actually reporting back to everyone. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly. So Winifred was talking about the need to bring groups together as some kind of support system. And so she was saying, did I think that the state organizing centers would fill that role? And I said I thought that was exactly the kind of role that a SOC could play. And someone else, I think Ramona talked about the need to build collaboration and how this might fulfill that role. Gary talked about the need to support small businesses and entrepreneurship, and what an important role that small businesses play, particularly in renewable energy. Ramona was then almost responding to that and saying, well, we need to be a little bit careful about what businesses are promoting. We need a clear, we could end up in conflict if they're promoting business practices that might actually have, consequences that are actually environmental injustices. And so she talked about conflict resolution. I also said, and I forgot to say this in my presentation, kind of everything we do is underpinned by a policy platform, which pretty clearly says, here's all the things that we don't support, which is pretty well aligned with nearly all our members. I I think Myra said that she was also interested to see how the SOCs develop, particularly where members have a common interest and they need to keep everybody well informed. Someone said they need to be well resourced, otherwise they'll just zap their energy. So members need to feel well resourced. The SOCs need to be well resourced. And I think it was Daryl who said that that we have the potential to draw on the resources of other organizations, and Daryl specifically mentioned River Network, for example, who have resources and have a common interest in running campaigns on issues like water quality. So perhaps there might be multiple SOCs who want to do water quality campaigns, and we could partner with River Network to do that. Is there, I guess I'm not going to have time to go back and say, is there anything else? But maybe we could, at the end, if we get through all the groups, we could say, is there anything else that anybody would like to add? Group number 2, does anybody know who is in, can anybody own up to being in group number 2 and there being a reporter for group 2? So Dennis, I think you were saying you were in group 2, is that right? Were you waving an arm, a hand? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute still.
Miss Terry, I think you were also group 2. Did you want to report back?
Who was that? Alita?
Miss Terry. I thought she was taking notes.
I think Dennis was taking notes. I think.
Oh, Dennis was taking
ahead,
notes.
And if you leave anything out, we can all jump in. How about
that? Please do that. Well, I think our main focus after we got into it a little bit was how do we capitalize on the extensive membership in A2 to try to identify members who have whose focus is similar to or the same as what we have. How can we get those groups together? First of all, on the at the local or regional level, but also at the national level, so that we can learn from each other and be encouraged by each other. And I think from where I stand, what would have to happen is that A2 would have to take the lead to try to help us make that happen. And Alita, you cited the 4 areas. What were they again? There was air, water, soil, and one other. Anyway, that would be, seems to me, a place to start. So just because we're, as our example, just because we're focused on Intel's toxic air emissions, it doesn't mean that we couldn't and wouldn't learn from an organization that's working to fight against emissions from a power plant, for example. So there was that. And then the other thing that I said was that I think that we need to organize ourselves to be able to interact with, in a very aggressive way, our regulatory agencies, and ask them, not only ask them, but tell them about what we want and what we need, and to let them know that we think when they're truly not doing their job, that's the case, and let them know that we want them to support us. They're supposed to be protecting us. And chances are we'll find, and perhaps many have already found, that they're not going to get that kind of help that we would think they should be providing. And so then if and when we get that kind of feedback, we have that in our hip pocket, and we can take that back to the public in our campaigns and say, look, here's this organization at the state level or whatever that is supposed to protect us, and they're not doing it. and put them on the spot. I think that may be the second best thing that we could do.
Mhm.
Anything else from group 2 that was omitted?
Well, similar to group 1, members need to be well resourced, and that perhaps A2 could continue to facilitate special workshops on specific grants, so people could be able to get their questions asked and help them to develop their proposals. That would be great if you all could continue to do that.
I would just add on top of that in addition to federal funds, non-federal funding sources would also be important because I mean we don't have infrastructure as an example, and the federal grant process requires an awful lot of technical support that we just can't even begin to think about ourselves. And so if A2 can help us to identify non-federal funding sources, that would be of great help.
Thank you.
And the
We
other,
also talked about the regional gatherings. I think you had in this strategy planning the importance of telling our narratives. And so one idea was that we said, what if we based on, I don't know, state or region, that we meet up every now and then? Because like for public access TV stations, we can together meet up from A2 and do a narrative documentary, do some interviewing with maybe intergenerational, maybe even get some footage from our area of environmental concern and put a TV show together. And we would really work together in that way so we won't feel so isolated. I think one of the Marcy mentioned how she doesn't have the supports from the city council or the mayor or certain organizations. So if we became together as regional groups, meeting, I don't know, once a month, twice a month, meeting in person or on Zoom, what we can do is put together a script on which we can say, okay, who are the people that can edit this? Could we go to a local public access television show and do our own TV show together? So that way each of our organizations has a segment of that show, but also maybe really getting access from maybe even the TV show for the city or the high schools where that it's free. And I think that allows us not to be so isolated as well, like Marcia was mentioning, because that way we can build some camaraderie on this call. Since we have so much to do usually in the discussions, we can meet up as regional hubs. And it really is supportive to strategize together on putting that narrative out, and even an article we can write together. That would really make us strong, even if it's north, south, east, west, but even state to state. I know the Bay Area, there's a few of us. I would love to see you all. Let's do coffee and talk about this strategy as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I realized we've got 7 minutes to go through 6 groups, complete mess up. I do apologize. I've just sent an email to my next meeting saying I'm going to be 10 minutes late, so I can go on for an extra 10 minutes. And then if there are groups that wouldn't mind taking notes and sending them to me, just in case we still run out of time, I would truly appreciate that. I apologize for messing up on this. Let's go to group number 3.
So I can report back for group number 3, Karis, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so myself, Karis, Kennedy, Amber. Yeah, group 3. So we looked at an annual conference was one as a way to bring all of the groups together so that we could do more things around cumulative impact, because everybody is not working on the same thing. Everybody's working on, whether they're working on air, land, and water, but we haven't had an opportunity for us to come together and coalesce around some of the other issues. We also looked at, Kennedy's suggestion was having, looking at the hubs that you talked about and creating some type of caucus or committees across A2 with that, using that. And then the roles and responsibilities task. looking at community leads, understanding like if we have these hubs, what are the roles and responsibilities of the people that are leading those hubs in the various communities? Who's in charge? We also looked at this whole thing around burnout from people who are doing work on the A2 side and on the CBOs, because some are smaller, but even looking at the possibility for around support and professional development is important. And always, I think looking at funding. How can we look at funding? And then one of the things that I brought up was that I know that so many of us are small CBOs, but maybe bring in a person to talk about kind of get a group insurance plan together or a 401k, so that since many of our comrades end up with without a retirement fund and don't have insurance, and so we look at the high incidence of deaths in people who are running small nonprofits. And so that was did I get everything, y'all?
That's cool.
Okay.
Cool. I like the idea of, shared services and shared, using the, collective might of all our members to purchase things in a, better deal and provide services. Thank you. Anybody else from group 3 that wanted to add anything? Anything missed out? No. Let's go on to group 4 then.
That would be moi. We had Delia, Francis, Susan Lively, Stuart, I think was in a corner somewhere, just kidding. Very quickly, 2 members brought up handling misinformation and disinformation. Delia felt strongly the whole conversation around asylum seekers, immigrants, how they're impacted by climate change, how they end up here, how they're treated because of the communication around them, particularly those of color, as opposed to perhaps Ukrainian folks that came in the country, as an example. Also, climate migration within the nation, also impacting mostly communities of color, being a source for the correct information around those things is, I think, what Delia was saying. Francis feels good about the goals, particularly the goal of 500 groups in 2025 and 2026. And is grateful to be a part of the organization, as we are grateful to have her as part of the organization. Susan echoed the misinformation and focused on getting the truth out there about environmental ills and environmental justice. I feel that's a really important goal for the group. Also wants to work a way into the goals, how to deal with recalcitrant, cowardly elected officials. And then a national policy holding city, state, federal, that was echoed throughout the group meeting, finding a way to hold accountable where and how the money is going. Did I get that all right, guys?
Can you, Mish, type that and send it to me?
I'll try.
I don't think I got it all right, all complete in my notes.
Okay.
Thank you. So are we on 5 now? Right now, quick 5?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, Celia.
Yeah, I just also included, I'm not sure if it's called a 501c3, I mean C4, I can't remember.
Oh, yes.
If A2, that's another possibility. We have more power, has become a 501c4, because we're all struggling in our own communities. But to get more power, I think a 501c4. And another thing I thought, military has the largest budget, and they're the biggest polluters. And I don't think we call them out enough. Look what's happening in Israel and in Gaza, what is happening now in Lebanon. And so it's just like a continuous, I don't want to call it a merry-go-round, but it seems like the biggest polluters, which is US, China, and I'm blanking on that, are continue to extract resources from our folks like Congo, Mexico, Honduras, all are these countries that are communities of color. And the US extracts those resources, but when they try to come into the US because of war or because of climate migration, and then we don't want to let them in. And so there's always this racism going on, is to paint people of color as the villains. And in actuality, the biggest polluters are the US. and Congo. I mean, what's happening in Congo, and the only way I can see that we can be stronger as an organization is to think about possibility of 501c4.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. Sorry, were we on group 5? Mish, were you? Yeah. What are we on?
Correct.
Group 5.
Yeah, group 5. We have 1 minute and somebody suggested having a follow-up meeting.
Right. Sorry, you were group 5, so we're on group 6. Is that right? No, we now in group 5.
4.
Who's
I was
5?
4, 5 is next.
Oh,
We're up to 5.
who's 5? Can anyone remember being in group 5?
Beth was taking notes.
Beth was
No,
taking
thank
notes.
you.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And I'd like to thank the group members because they had the best ideas. The first one was that we would establish a way for the groups to do their own media and put it on YouTube and TikTok so that we could have a way of showing what's going on all across our groups, but they're on a A2 channel. We need to know who the new members are and what the staff are doing. So that was a separate one. We would also like to set up committees based on issues across the country, which are similar to what we do in the peer-to-peer, so that people can work together and that they would meet monthly, but if there was an emergency, they might meet more frequently, and that quarterly, all the committees would have a meeting, maybe semi-annually, they'd have a meeting together to say what the committees are doing. Separately, we'd like the A2 staff to travel more to the local offices. Separately, we'd like to find common issues. Maybe they would come out of these committees that are common to all the groups, as many as possible, such as insurance. Under goals and objectives, we discussed increasing the community's awareness of issues. So we would be measuring that. We would also have an annual or a biannual trip to DC for a rally or a hearing. And we would also want to continue to assure that our groups work to include diversity and strategize by targeting lower income areas to organize and convert it to membership in the groups. That's it.
Terrific.
Yep.
I got all of that.
Anybody else have
Good.
anything?
Thank you. Group 6.
That would be us, us being Macy and Christina from Land Health Institute, and Jack and I from A2. A lot of what we discussed have already been discussed, but the 4 big buckets were how would the SOCs and the hubs work together? How are they different and how will they work together? Also, managing federal funds, more help with that. It can be overwhelming, and also making sure that the groups are managing the funds correctly. The guidance from the federal government isn't always clear, and group members can't always make the forums where maybe some of these things are explained. Also, subsections, I think that was mentioned by some of the groups, like within A2, the groups kind of form subgroups, like groups that deal with the issue of flooding, or groups that are dealing with, I don't know, mining issues or whatever their issues are in the area. And that way they could be more cross collaboration. The listserv is great, but it can sometimes be overwhelming if you're not familiar with the topics that are flying through the listserv. Also a way to share experiences around grant opportunities. Sometimes people will post their positive experience applying for a grant or negative experiences. It'd be nice to have a more formalized way of exchanging information on grant opportunities as they come up, if people have prior experience with them. And finally, the last one was the role storytelling can play in what we're doing, not only internally through A2, but also externally to the wider audience. So that was it. I hope I got everything. If my group has anything to add.
Good. Okay, you got the thumbs up. Group 7. I'm feeling like so exhilarated by all of this. I'm just going, yes, yes, yes. It's so exciting.
I
Group
can
7.
speak for group 7. Arif was he had to hop off a meeting, but we had a lot of great ideas. Felicia talked about just the importance of connecting with community members really directly, door to door, and getting back to that kind of on the ground contact. Arif talked a lot about the importance of having legislative experts on our staff, really understanding the legislative priorities and kind of the landscape of each state or region, and being able to have that expertise. He also talked about, well, in general, we all sort of talked about kind of the same things the whole group is saying, connecting people, how to facilitate the connections between members, doing it by region or state, but also by issue and figuring out ways that people can find each other easier. And then Lilia's also talked about the importance of understanding in certain areas it may be harder to get the state. You might need to think more regional, but there's also challenges of the difference between rural and urban organizing and kind of how we think about all of that. I think that was mostly it. If there was anything else I missed, feel free to jump in.
And finally, group 8.
I took notes for our group. I was in the group with Diane Henry, Diane Post, David Kyler, and Pamela Talley. And I think also reiterating a lot of what has been discussed, but our conversation centered around being able to both identify folks within your state, within your region to form coalition, but also finding the leaders within the community and making sure that they're not intimidated by the process of getting involved when it is really an intimidating process and there is that kind of barrier to entry. We also talked about having like an effective outreach and communications and like maybe PR strategies for making sure that folks know and like learn about A2 and they can get involved. So rather than just having like the referral process, which is very important. So having that, but also having, I guess, just a broader reach. We had a conversation about the city and the rural divide and how there's a lot of action happening in the cities, but there's a big need in the rural areas and that somehow that needs to be addressed. We didn't have a real solution yet, but just a topic that needs to be thought of. We also talked about a need for better integration of scientific expertise. So making sure that TA is available to all members, making sure that they know of it and that they know how to access it, as well as potentially having in-house like A2 research and policy development expertise to help guide those state and regional efforts. Would say the final pieces of feedback was that the regional definition was really, really important, that there should be more mention of tribes and the role that they play in this, because they have critical knowledge that would really help to shape the work that everyone is doing. And finally, I think there was a desire for a little bit of clarification around who the plan is trying to reach, and that it should identify requisite groups, so those impacted, those empower, those that will be impacted by specific policy decisions, as well as bad actors or targets to rally against. And I would welcome, I don't know if anyone from the group is here, but if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I was in the group. I just wanted to underscore one important thing about dirty energy in Georgia. We just had a huge controversy over wood burning combustion as a source of generating electricity, removing trees from sequestration, risking people's health because of the particulates, and of course adding to greenhouse gas emissions. We've got to do something to target these bad actors to prevent things getting worse, as well as trying to make things better for existing bad trends.
Here. Thank you. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to go to my next meeting, and I know many of you have. I am so incredibly grateful to you. This is really, really exciting. I could see the smiles on the A2 team's faces. I think we've all found this extremely stimulating, and we will you know, take notes and take on board. We don't want to, you know, make the strategic plan too long, but we are going to figure out ways to act on as much as what you have, you know, told us. And obviously many of the things you've said have been common. I mean, the, you know, groups, national groups, working groups, I guess, on common national issues. For example, I think at least 5 groups came up with that. So much of what you said is sort of reinforcing. So thank you. I will be back in touch to discuss the next steps. I think, you know, I found this sort of moving to breakout groups and getting people's feedback very stimulating. And I think it would be good, for example, do more of this as well. Thank you. With a little bit more time, maybe. Thank you.
Thanks, Harriet.
We'll definitely get that
Look forward to
information to you.
Bye then.
Thanks, Harriet.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.